Visiting with Courtney Oakes from Sentinel, Colorado. He covers the Aurora corridor up and down from north to south. That's a lot of high school athletic programs to cover, and he's been doing that for 18 years. Courtney, let's talk about some of the topics that apply for what is becoming spring transitioning into the summer, starting with Anders Erikson. I know him from covering championship games, lacrosse, and hockey. I mean, he's a dual sport athlete, but eventually ended up at Furman. And you wrote a piece about kind of a unique situation where the pandemic basically canceled his program, and then he's out on the lam.
Yeah, kind of blindsided that, a lot of Division I schools are cutting sports of all different kinds. And, of course, Title IX is at play as well. So at Furman, the only sports they cut were male sports. So they cut men's lacrosse as well as the baseball program, which they said affected 95 athletes and 6 coaches. And so, yes, Anders was one of those, and pretty much completely blindsided by it. He told me that they were having a team Zoom meeting, and his coach said, okay, now we need to join this bigger Zoom meeting. And they came online with all the Furman administrators, and they're like, uh-oh. They knew something big was coming down, and then they just got the shocking news, I guess, that just shortly after their season was ended, after only 7 games, that there would be no more future for the program.
Let's move on to other notes. I want to talk basketball, something unique that I know very much about, and this applies to you, guys that you've been covering for so many years. How about Metro State University of Denver? The Roadrunners seem to be making a shift to filling up the roster with guys you know so well. I think of Laolu, who's moving towards his sophomore year, playing for head coach Michael Bahl. But then you have Reggie Gibson coming back. You have Randall. Obi Ogbin has signed to play for the Roadrunners. And then also
Christian
Speller, who's going to be playing for the Roadrunners. So what's your reaction when you saw all those guys, again, from your beat, joining that program, which is so close in downtown Denver?
Man, I love it. I'm going to have to make a point of checking out some of those games because, yeah, those were some of the most fun guys to watch, I think, that I've covered. And, Obi and Christian Speller were both first-team All-Aurora this year. And Tyrei, I know it's been a few years, but I think he was first-team All-Aurora as well. And the Overland guys, they just come from such a great, such a great program, and they're going to come, I think, add a whole lot to that program. So all of those guys together, I don't know how well all of them know each other, whether there's an A-Town chemistry that comes with that. The Rangeview guys, I think, know each other pretty well. Yeah. But, I mean, A-Town is so renowned for basketball right now, and so it is a smart move to bring together some of the top players, from the area in years past and see what can happen. And, they do have all these local roots, and, they might be able to help you pull some other bigger recruits, in the future from the city that might stray elsewhere otherwise.
Yeah, and I think of your comment, that was one of my reactions too. Is I haven't talked personally with head coach Michael Bahl about what that strategy is, or if it's just coincidence. But yeah, I was thinking smart move. You keep, some of those guys you're getting from elsewhere, including pipelines, outside of the United States. But boy, now you're talking. You got coaching staff, Sean Palmer from Rangeview and Danny Fisher from Overland. They can come over and take a peek at their local guys, and then those families all have an opportunity to, put some butts in the seats over there at Aurora Center. So it just seemed like, man, that looks good. And of course, we've watched those guys play in the past, so it should be very fun.
And hungry guys, like all of those guys are hungry guys. So I have no, qualms about what kind of work they're going to put in. And you obviously see the social media banter, about how excited they are to be together. And so it's, I don't know, as they say, grab your popcorn and we'll see what's going to happen.
Yeah, definitely. And good guys too. I mean, as far as not only watching them on the court, but based on what I know about them,
sure.
I think of guys like Reggie and Obi, like, those are good kind of guys I like to root for too. What about Rangeview track and field? I like to stay moving forward, but I kind of feel, and you can check me down if you want or agree with me, like we missed something with Rangeview's track and field program not being able to compete because of the pandemic.
Without question. I mean, Man, they had 218 athletes, combined boys and girls, and 43 seniors, which is, I mean, I don't typically ask the numbers of all the programs around, but I can't imagine there are too many bigger programs than that in a lot of places. And, Chris Carhart was at Hinckley, and the Hinckley boys finished third in the state 2 years in a row, and I think blew everybody's minds. And he's working similar type of things over there. And man, those kids love him, and they love the way he runs short practices, short, intense practices, and they're out of there in, they were saying sometimes 45 minutes worth of practice. And, track practice can drag and drag and drag, and sometimes you don't get optimal, performances out of your athletes, but I think he does, in part because of how regimented it is and how inclusive it is of a wide variety of athletes. And they did have, a handful of returning state, not a lot of like super high placers, but point scorers who probably would have scored in multiple events, huge relay depth, and some throwers and some like distance guys that might have been able to grab a few points here or there. And, you just add that up if you would have added that up over 3 days, you kind of sometimes never know where you're going to end up at the end.
Well, and Rangeview was going to be on the radar for, those within that track and field community. I talked to Bobby Reyes from Colorado Mile Split on an episode of Prep Spotlight Colorado. Not only were Rangeview names dropped, but then, there was one event that was held before the pandemic shutdown, and, there were some Raiders that were there on the list of those who were at least victorious or doing quite well. Right now, are any of those guys or girls going to be returning for the following track and field season? Is that a possibility?
I think the majority of just those big elite athlete point scorers, I think we're all seniors.
Okay.
I'm not sure on some of the up and comers, and of course with the with the numbers of that size, there's bound to be several talented underclassmen that are coming up. But the names that I know primarily, and the ones that probably would have been the key focus were seniors. So they will be missed for sure.
As we talked to Courtney Oakes from Sentinel, Colorado, which is the Aurora beat, when we think of the two different school districts and what is coming up next, you mentioned swimming, and there were baby steps. I think favorable steps regarding that sport. I saw your piece. So what's going on with that, and why is that a good thing for local swimmers?
Well, competitive swimmers have been out of the pool for 10 plus weeks. And some of them even literally in mid-March when the pandemic really blew up. Many of the high school athletes were actually at a sectional meet in Wisconsin, had traveled all the way there, and then were told to turn around and go back home because the meet was unsafe, and they were sent home, and they hadn't been in the pool since then. The biggest fight, I talked to Todd Schmitz of the Colorado Stars, who coached Missy Franklin, of course, during her Olympic runs. And his point was that that pools are always seemingly lumped together in health departments. Like they consider neighborhood splash pools and to be the same as pools that are used for lap swimming and training, which clearly is not the case. And so the movement has been towards allowing some outdoor training. And a little bit of indoor training too, but a lot of facilities are closed. There are very few real outdoor facilities that can accommodate swimming. My piece centered around the Mission Aurora, Colorado swimming facility in Aurora, where it's actually a pool that's enclosed, has a roof over it, but all the sides open up. So there's fresh air moving through it at all times. So it's considered an outdoor pool, even though it does have a cover over it. They put together a very complex, socially distanced, mask wearing, coming in your suit, no sharing of equipment, temperature checks on entry, spacing in pools, and limiting their groups to 10 or less, which they are allowed to do now in an outdoor facility. I believe indoor it's still 4. 4, and that's including a coach. So that's much more difficult. But a lot of these clubs are so large that the max facility will be running from, maybe 6:30 in the morning to 9:30 at night, because they have to stagger their numbers in their age groups. And they can also rent the facility to other teams as well, who could come in at whatever hours are permissible. And so that's the challenge right now, is that the size of these clubs is so much that they still have, it's really hard to schedule all of those kids.
I just like the idea that at least they can get in and work together with a very small group safely and get some work done. And it's counterintuitive from what I was thinking, where, the pool water, that's not safe at all. But as you explained, where some of the elements, including the chlorine, it actually can be done.
The pool water itself, yes, there have been a lot of studies that have suggested that there's very little transmission risk in chlorinated water. And apparently there are recommendations about how many parts per million the chlorine needs to be to make sure of that. And I'm quite sure that they're going to err a little bit on the side of, of caution to do that. And again, this is for lap swimming and training. This is not for, neighborhood kids and people that just like to enjoy a pool for what a regular pool is. This is, work being done. And, swimmers are so regimented. It's really amazing to me how, a lot of them don't care if it's 4:30 in the morning for practice. They thrive on the structure and on what it means to them, and they feel uncentered when they don't have it. And so it's very important for them to have that possibility.
And that's why, another one of the elements for athletes like that, and in, across all sports, for them to even just get a little bit of that structure that they're accustomed to and used to, that they lost because of all that's going on. That's a good thing for them. Even though I'm sure some athletes will say it's tough also training for something where there's no target. Well, the targets will come down the road, right? Get together and get some work. Who else is thinking about targets? Because we are entering summer, and, football, volleyball, this is where, they start thinking about their upcoming season and where they're going to get some training done. On the beat, as you're making your rounds of calls, are you getting any reads from football and volleyball coaches that you're able to share at all?
It's a lot of wait and see. Things change. It's just amazing. It's sometimes I write in a story and I think, whatever I'm writing here in 2 days will probably be obsolete, or it'll look completely different. So I think they're kind of just, they're obviously very hopeful, and they're, I can say this, I don't think anybody's going to be unprepared for when they're allowed to begin. There seems to be a lot of preparation and a lot of thought being put into what could be possible. And again, you could have 5 plans in place and have to throw out 4 of them. But I have a pretty good amount of confidence that they'll be ready to go, and that they're communicating ways for their kids to work out in whatever ways they can, to be prepared.
Yeah, that's one of my things when you talk about the communicating, with some of my work at the college level too, is that, people should understand, including what we're doing right now, which applies, is the communication and the studying that's in place right now. What football or volleyball looks like in terms of execution, because they can't get together, that might be a little raw as we get started during the fall. But, they are still talking and communicating. They're not shut out from each other, right?
Correct. Yeah. Especially now with CHSA lifting the moratorium of training with coach. In limited situations, obviously, but the fact that they could have contact with each other and, in some ways, and they can share information and, and things like that, certainly. And, everybody in this is, facing the same kind of thing, the same kind of challenges. And so, obviously there are those programs that have been running like clockwork in recent years that probably will hit the ground running just because of that tradition and everything that's been in place. But from a fitness execution standpoint, I think a lot of teams are going to be in the same kind of boat when we get to return.
And we're in that boat too, right? You think of the athletes, the coaching staffs, their supporters, and us, media people. We're ready, right?
For sure.
You just say when, world.
For sure.
And we're on it.
Right.
Well, hey, Courtney, thanks so much for visiting. We appreciate that. Check out his stuff, Sentinel, Colorado. You can check him out on Twitter and on the web, of course, so you can view and consume some of his good stuff. Again, he's been doing it for 18 years, kind of knows what he's doing, which is why we're sourcing him. Thanks, Courtney.
Thank you so much, Marty.